Hi there, you're with NDTV Profit, and this is the fine print. The Government of India has a new advisory for intermediaries rolling out artificial intelligence products in the Indian market. The advisory has been issued under the information technology rules. They say that platforms must ensure that users don't upload or share unlawful content while using AI products. Intermediaries or platforms have to ensure that their products, including AI models, don't result in biased results that may threaten the integrity of India's electoral process. Explicit government approval will be needed by platforms to use under-testing or unreliable AI models, and such under-tested models will need to carry a disclaimer that the output can be reliable. Now, even as the stakeholders and the market and the media was digesting this advisory, Rajiv Chandrasekhar has just tweeted out saying that the advisory is aimed at significant platforms and permission seeking from the ministry is only for large platforms and will not apply to startups. He's also explained saying that the advisory is aimed at untested AI platforms from deploying on Indian internet, and the process of seeking permission, labeling, and consent-based disclosure to users about untested platforms is insurance policy for platforms who can otherwise be sued by consumers. Now, what does this all mean for the internet, the innovation in the AI space? Where is all this coming from? Can the government be faulted for wanting AI models to be more responsible? And is this the best way to go about it? To answer all this and more, I'm joined by Rahul Matthan, partner at Trilegal. Rahul, welcome to the fine print. First, let's set the sort of background or explain the background to all of this. Can you help us understand with what's happened in the recent past? I'm sure most of us who've been plugged into the news in the space know where all this is emanating from, but just for the viewers who don't know, can you give us the context of where this advisory apprehension is coming from?
So I don't for sure know exactly where this is coming from, because as you read through the Twitter space, you hear all sorts of comments as to what exactly is the reason for this. I can hazard a guess, and I think when Google launched Gemini 1.5, it was supposed to be this great large context window model, but after a couple of days, it started spewing out perhaps things that were inaccurate. The images were very, very diverse, perhaps to counterbalance some of the diversity challenges that the earlier models had. And right now it was being quite silly in the extent to which it was incorporating diversity in the images. And then some of the questions that were asked to the model yielded some answers that were perhaps not the sorts of answers that one would want to hear from a model. And perhaps it is all of this that has provoked this sort of reaction from the government. There are other people who have been talking also on the Twitterverse or on X about some local models that have been built by Indian startups, and some concerns around the fact that those models may not be fully tested. Clearly, that I think is sort of the reason for this. And I'm sure in the course of this conversation, we're going to get into whether this is the right thing or not. So I'll stop here. But just to say that artificial intelligence as it currently stands today, which is large language models, are fundamentally probabilistic technologies. What they will do is they will scan through a vast context of information and try and find answers that are appropriate in the context. But when they try and find the answers, this is not some oracular technology that is finding perfect solutions. These are probabilistic solutions. These are technologies that are trying to find the statement which has the highest probability of aligning with what the request is. And in that, it is fundamentally going to be flawed, regardless of how good people make them.
Yes, Rahul, you've always batted for innovation, but innovation can't sort of happen in, without any oversight, without any regulation entirely. So let me come to you with this question. We're staring at the national election. The timing of all of this is, let's say, very crucial for the electoral process that's about to happen in our country. In that context, is the government not sort of in the right to say that, look, you're rolling out these models, you're testing it on the public, not probably labeling it to the extent that you should, because while people might tinker and experiment with this technology, the responses that it throws up has power to influence ordinary users and consumers. With that background, what do you think the government's stance should be? Should they let this innovation run wild, or there are ways or better ways to make the platforms, the AI models, the users more responsible?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think your technology is going to keep changing. There's always going to be new risks that technology brings up. And we're always going to have elections. Every 5 years or every 2.5 years, we're going to have some sort of election. There's going to be some sort of reason why we should not want the latest version of technology to be unleashed. But I'll say this, Payaswini. We've always had people who have used new technologies to find new ways to subvert information. I would say ever since Julius Caesar's time, at Julius Caesar's time, they had a newspaper and there was fake news in the newspaper. And then well before television, there was fake news in print journalism. And then there was fake news in radio. And then there was fake news in visual media. Now we've got really believable fake news.
Bothersome.
Sorry?
The extent, the reach of it, which is sort of bothersome, which requires quicker addressing than not.
Every Payaswini in every decade or so was asking, every Rahul Matthan asked the same question and said that, look, this new technology has greater reach. I will give you this in writing that the next technology that comes will have even greater reach than this technology. So the point I'm trying to make is not this. There is always a pressure that technology will bring to bear on the existing way of doing things. And we can certainly call for a pause during this election season because this is the general elections and maybe we think that this is super important. All I would say is that technology is galloping at a frenetic pace. And if we stop innovation for even 3 months that it's going to take for us to get past this election, we will, I'm afraid, be just completely out of the race when we resume. So that's not the solution in my mind. And I think that no matter what we do, there will be people who will find ways of using technology that don't perhaps fall directly within. So just remember that this is aimed at intermediaries. As the Honorable Minister says, it's aimed at the large platforms. Now, that's not to stop small platforms from doing this. This is now very easily accessible general purpose technology. So, we may be chopping the head off and finding that it's the tail that carries the sting. This is not the way to deal with this. I think, with every revolutionary technology, there is going to be a time when society will struggle to come to terms with these new changes. The example that I often give is photographs. When photography was first invented, we believed photographs as the truth because this was a mechanical representation of what the eye could see that could not be tampered with. And then, of course, Photoshop came and we don't believe any photograph because today it's possible to tamper with absolutely any photograph. So it's no longer evidence of the truth. And what's happening right now is with digital video and with digital audio, that exactly the same Photoshop moment is happening. And so we are going to have to struggle as a society to come to terms with this. There's going to be no shortcut. I'm quite sure that the government is well-intentioned in putting this out. I'm afraid that the government hasn't considered the consequences because, this is an important technology for our country. AI has tremendous use cases for development, and we've got to allow innovation to proceed apace. I know there's going to be difficulties. We've got to find new ways to deal with that.
Okay. Has anybody found an answer or the balance in terms of, let's say other jurisdictions to deal with it in a fashion that allows innovation to thrive, yet we don't have the ramifications like we saw in, Gemini's case? Is there a right answer or a balance to your mind?
Look, I mean, I think what happened with Gemini is actually a good lesson that we could apply. The moment Gemini came out and the results were sort of not so okay. This of course was social media and various people posting that these were the problems. But what was the result of that? Google paused the use of Gemini for generating images, and that's sort of the reaction we need. Um, if these if these technologies in the initial launch don't perform as we want, as society wants them to perform, leave aside what the technology companies want them to perform, but as society wants them to perform, we need to be able to very quickly pull back those models, make the changes, and release better updated, more advanced models. And in that iterative process, we will get it right. So I think the point really is not to try and require companies to take pre-approvals, because we don't even know what they're pre-approving for. These are such probabilistic models, and we're tending away from narrow models to general purpose models. The goal is general intelligence. And in general intelligence, there is no way to fully test all aspects of it, because if there was, it wouldn't be general intelligence. You would be testing within a very narrow parameter of things. So this pre-approval for AI is a doomed approach, in my view. I think the best thing we can do is constantly and rigorously test the models before they are put out into the wild. And perhaps the government can insist that that be done. And then recognize that even after this testing, that when the model comes out into the wild, it will still have some faults. And so have mechanisms so that we can, in a very rapid way, respond to these changes so that we can pull them back if required.
Coming back to what the solution is, if I can sort of simplify what you're saying, your sort of opinion is that we should course correct, have a quick fix. Let's say if the output from these AI models is biased or harmful or unlawful, if I can sort of use these broad terms, rather than have again license regime before you roll out any of these models. Is that what you're saying? That don't have prior
Right.
permissions, but have a sort of architecture or best practice to quickly fix or take down once the company notices an unlawful result?
Yeah, look, I mean, fix not take down. I think, look, if there's a model, these models are too large to fix, but they certainly are. It is possible for us to change the way in which they've been tuned, such that the output that they give is more aligned to what we need. So I would really say I wrote about this in a piece last week. Essentially, the solution has got to be having the workforce and the government to constantly monitor these things that are coming out, and when required, reach back to the companies to say, look, everything is fine. It's just in this area, it's giving results that are not okay. Can you tweak it such that it comes back online? And I think that's sort of the way to do it. I don't think
Now,
we
Rahul, there's
in
the
the
danger
country.
of then the government dictating, outcomes and sort of answers that are to its liking, because then there will be another set of protests or rather voices that say, how is government regulating free speech?
Well, you have the same problem right now, because the best way to regulate free speech is to just muzzle the speech completely. So if AI models are going to need pre-approval, what's the basis on which they get pre-approval? The government has got to now evaluate all of these things. No government officer who knows that once they have given approval to a model and later on that model ends up spouting all sorts of gibberish is going to last another day in his post. So he's not going to give an approval. This is really not a solution to the free speech problem.
Okay, so let me come to this. I'm sure after this advisory, you'll have your clients come to you and ask you, hey, Rahul, tell us how do we go about this? What do we do as next steps? What is your advice to them now, given that the minister has tweeted out saying that it's for significant platforms and permissions will not be required by startups, and you to sort of label untested AI models very clearly. What is the advice to the companies that you're going to give at this stage? What is it that they're going to the government with?
Gosh, it's really difficult, because as a lawyer, I'm trained to really advise clients on the basis of communications from the government. There was a time when we only needed to advise on laws and regulations and formal subsidiary regulation. But we have expanded that scope to advising them on the basis of advisories as well, just because it's, that's the nature of technology. But I really don't know if I can extend that to the point of advising them on the basis of Twitter or X posts, because first of all, X itself is an intermediary. Who knows whether it's going to be allowed to retain this beyond a point, and whether this becomes sort of a evidence of the government's intentions. I would really wait for the advisory to be amended and for that clarity to be written into the advisory. Right now, the advisory speaks very broadly in terms of intermediaries, and that's what we'll have to rely on.
So, okay, can I also ask you the legal basis of this advisory? Is it sound on that? Is that something that you think can be questioned? Because it says under the IT rules, under the digital guidelines, intermediary guidelines, and digital media ethics code. Is there a reason for us to question the legality of this advisory at this point?
No, I mean, this has been issued formally by the Ministry of Information Technology. I can see no reason why this is not something that we need to take as something that is officially come from the government. It, in a logical sense, flows from the Intermediary Guidelines 2021. And I think that if this were to be enforced, I don't think that a court is going to stand on form over substance and say that, look, this is not, because it was not formally issued as a regulation, you're not to take into account this advice. And I don't think any client of mine is going to have the courage to say, I'm waiting for formal rules that are laid before Parliament before I comply with it. That's just not the way in which technology regulation works today. So I would just say that we need to give due legal credence to what has been issued by the ministry. I would wish that these things are issued in a more formal sense, as in through regulations. But that's also the nature of technology regulation today. Technology moves so quickly that we're going to need to have to rely on some of these things. But I wouldn't go so far as to relying on a post on a social media site. I don't think anyone would take comfort from something like that.
Okay, so in the coming days, what is the clarity, Rahul, that you're looking at, given that I'm sure a lot of these significant platforms are your clients and will come to you for advice? What are the unanswered questions to your mind at this stage that you'd like the ministry to sort of clarify in its advisory?
Look, I think if it's aimed at large social media intermediaries, it should be clarified. But quite frankly, I think that any form of pre-approval would be the death knell of AI in this country. I think if we're saying that we're going to aim this only at the large social media intermediaries, then look, a lot of the innovation is happening there. They're the ones that have the capabilities to invest large amounts of money in building these big models. And those models, of course, they can't be doing horrible things, but the things that they do that are useful to us, we can't have that denied us just because at one end of the spectrum, it's behaving badly. There are a lot of AI startups in the country that are really depending on some of these models to do a lot of things. And if out of fear, those things are taken away from the Indian market, then that would be unfortunate.
I take your principal objection, but I'm still keen to know what is it at this point that these significant platforms will be doing? Are they going to engage with the government at this stage? Are they going to ask for more clarity on what is the specific nature of permission that they require? Give me the roadmap of the next few days of a week as you advise your clients on adhering to this advisory.
Yeah, I think all of the above. I think certainly for existing models, they're going to need clarity as to what they should be doing because a lot of models are already out and available in India. Many of them are available through these large social media intermediaries, and the question is, what do they do? I think there would also be some effort to rationalize this advisory in the context of all the feedback that has come over the last few days. And hopefully there would be engagement with the government as far as that is concerned. But yeah, I think if there's no further clarity on this, or if at least to some extent it's not unwound, we may even see the more cautious social media intermediaries start to pull out their models from India, because until they get the permission, every day that they continue to operate in India could be a risk for them.
Yeah, and then there are the perils of India as a country not being represented in the data that these AI models are sort of gathering. And
No, but that's a whole different problem, Payaswini. That of course, we have to deal with. But we've got to first allow AI to work in the country before we can train it on the context for India. So that's really is the root of it. I think there's
context,
lots to
but
be
I'm
done.
just saying that if they stop sort of inputting India data and sort of making it available to the larger Indian consumer, those has its own set of challenges in terms of how included we are in the context of how these AI models are developing. Rahul, many thanks for giving us your first take on this advisory, and I'm sure as in the days to come, the engagement that hopefully will happen between the government and these large significant platforms will give us better clarity on what is it that the government is expecting the AI models to do. Thank you for watching us here on NDTV Profit. Have a good day.